members of the Labour Party were attacked because they wanted to go out ahead of the deadline for campaigns. In another place, the chairman of the Lagos State Parks Management Committee, Musiliu Akinsanya, popularly known as MC Oluomo, was reported as saying Mama Chukwudi should stay at home if Mama Chukwudi wants to vote for any other party apart from APC. Otherwise, well, he left that hanging. These security agencies, yes, they've been promising. There was an interagency committee meeting on electoral security. Now, please, what do you have in terms of message for all these security agencies in the face of what looks like real threat to peace tomorrow in Nigeria? For both of you, who will start first? Yemi, maybe you go first.
I think it's really very critical, not just security agencies, but really under that, the chief security officer of the state, which happens to be the governor. Now, you mentioned what happened with the Labour Party. There are 5 local governments in Lagos that there have been either statements or allegedly that there will be different festivals to keep the one, for example, for Ikorodu, the flyer that came out said not original Yoruba. I wonder what a fake Yoruba person is, or non-indigent. Now, we reached out shortly before the show to Abike Dabiri, who is from Ikorodu, and she shared a statement where the Oba's Palace said it's not true. But the point is, these things have gone out. 5 local governments, that's 20% of the local governments in Lagos State, or 25%, yeah, of the local governments in Lagos State. No statement from the Lagos State government. One, all of the Bales, Obas get their staff of office from Lagos State. So Lagos State has a responsibility to issue a statement telling citizens that they do have the right to vote. Because regardless of what the flyer might be fake or not fake, we understand things travel. So the flyer has traveled far. I just got the statement this morning, shortly before I came on air. People will capitalize on it. There's a thread on Twitter talking about a community, Akeson, where people are already capitalizing on that to just harass people and tell them they're walking during daylight. Because part of the narrative is also Olu and all these festivals happen at night, so it shouldn't affect anything. But when people capitalize on it and people are afraid, it keeps people at home. So you have that. And then you have your point about MC Oluomo. I think what's critical about MC Oluomo, not only his antecedents as a head of the NURTW in Lagos and things that he's been alleged to have done, but also the fact that at this particular moment, he's a staff of Lagos State government. Again, another opportunity for the Lagos State government to speak very clearly. His statement on the video was not only stay home if you're not voting APC, he also said in Yoruba, basically, if the vote is not going our way, you know what to do. And there were reports about an APC rally in Acme 2 days ago or yesterday where the same things were being said. And that the fact that, for example, in Etiosa, it was because the military came out that they were unable to do what they wanted to do. Now, these are real concerns by agencies of the Lagos State government. And then the third thing that Lagos State also hasn't spoken to is its own actions in telling civil servants to bring, they wanted photocopies of the polling PVCs. They were listing out people's polling units so they can check if you delivered your polling unit. I said this last time that I was here. At the presidential election, one of the polling units in the Etiosa area, one of the gentlemen that was seen to have come in to disrupt with others was an official of a Lagos State agency. So I think this morning, my message quite clearly, in addition to security agencies, is to the Lagos State government, or more directly actually, to the governor of Lagos State. You are not governor of APC members, you are not governor of Yorubas, you are governor of Lagos State. And it is critical as we go to elections tomorrow for you to make a clear statement about the fact that, or whichever ones, we've got Amuwodofin local government, Ojo local government, Ajeromi Felodun, Etiosa, and Ikorodu. Those are the 5 local governments that flyers have been circulating that they're doing one thing or the other. So it's critical to address those ones. And it's critical to put your staff in check, i.e. MC Oluomo. His statements, yeah, this is the flyer now showing, but they now say that it's not really happening. But there needs to be a clear statement that it's not there, especially because of the language, non-original Yoruba and non-indigenous. And your staff, speaking to MC Oluomo, because the effect is real. it's not just people bringing out machetes or guns, but there's a psychological effect of will I be safe and what will happen. We have engaged the CP and he says he's escalating the issue. So we do expect that today that Lagos State will issue a statement to this effect.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Bukola, are you there?
Well, I think Yemi focused on Lagos State, and I want to say this is basically not an issue that is limited to Lagos alone. It is becoming a national national virus that we need to tame. The aspects of insecurity in election, violence in the election. And you see what is going on in Kano. What if you hear with our tracking and what has been going on in Kano, Kano is also a very serious hotspot in this coming election. You see what happened during on the 25th of February election. It was a bit terrible. Then you have Sokoto, you have Kaduna, just that in the north, and then Kogi. Things are going on there now in terms of violence. Then you come to the east, Enugu is there, and Imo is even another issue that we begin to see. Then you come back to Delta State, where you even have a assassination attempt on the PDP governorship candidate over there. And you've seen that all over. Even right here at our nose in Osun, we saw things happening. I think Osun State House of Assembly Speaker raised an alarm recently about what is going on in Ilesha, and that happened right there on our nose. So what the picture I'm trying to paint now is that it's like a national virus that we may need to tame. However, this is my major concern. We need to understand, and I think, let me borrow that from what Yemi said just now, that the governor is the governor of the state, not the governor of Yoruba or any other tribe. The same thing happened to the Nigerian police. They are called Nigerian police, not APC police, not PDP police, not Labour Party police, not NMPP police. The same thing when we come to Nigerian army. And I think this time their loyalty should be to the Nigerian constitution and not to anybody, whether it's contesting or not, whether you are the chief security officer or not, and who is giving illegal instruction to some of them to begin to do whatever they are doing. And I think we need to begin to come to that. If care is not taken, we are already collapsing and then corrupting our institutions. And then where we now begin to have loyalty to a person rather than to the state. So this is what we are having. After 25th of February election, people were arrested. You have election violence from our situation room. We recorded 89 cases of electoral violence spread across with 671 victims, and then some of them women and the rest. And then, so you now begin to ask yourself, the statement we've been able to get from the police is that investigation is ongoing and then they are going to pass some of them to INEC. Now, this is like 2 weeks after. What does it take? Even as I'm talking to you, politicians are already filing petition. Now, we are yet to see people in court, electoral offenders in court now. And when that injustice is done, then what happens is that people now begin to feel they are bigger than the state. And that is why somebody can come out boldly to say, look, Mama Shukudu should stay at home. By now, that particular person should be undergoing interrogation. By now, people that want to have, oral or whatever they are doing should be undergoing interrogation, because we are having a national. Are we saying that what we are going to do with overnight is bigger than that national program that is going on? And this is a conversation we need to begin to have. We don't need, and if care is not taken, like I said, we are collapsing the institution. And we are likely going to begin to see more. Now, one of the things we want to see is that we want to see somebody becoming an ex-convict because of electoral violence. We want to see somebody becoming an ex-convict because of electoral offense. And this, until we begin to do this, You know, we are just wasting our time, and things begin to go on and on and on. And let me paint a picture for you of what exactly. In 2019, I said it, 1,436 offenders. Till today, we don't know what happened to them. Now, we begin to dilly-dallying. Election Offense Commission, we are still expecting it. We hope the bill will be passed before this assembly, night assembly, will leave. But this is where we are. It's something we thought will be in place for this 2023 election, but this is where we are today. Now, we are coming into the state assembly election, which is more local than what we have in the February 25th election. And I think the security agencies, and let me say this, the security agencies have an idea of where the hotspots are. They have an idea of the victims, of the perpetrators, the likely perpetrators of violence. Now, what we want to see is that are they being proactive, or we want to see a security agencies that will be reactive on the election day. After the deed has been done, they will now begin to blow siren 15 minutes after coming to the scene and begin to arrest anybody they see. But while that thing is ongoing, do they have intelligence? What about the intelligence gathering? Now they need to nip things at the bud, or else we might likely have an election on Saturday that are going to be fraught with voter apathy because people are being intimidated. Then again, the little percentage of people that will come out are also going to be confronted with violence at the polling unit. And I think this is not the kind of election we want to have on Saturday.
Well, thank you, Mr. Idowu. So let me ask you a question. Yesterday we had Malam Garba Shehu, spokesperson of the president. And when we talked about election violence, or election security during election, he said there were isolated cases of violence in the country. So when we look back at February 25, we want to learn lessons from there. If we don't feel that security was a big issue, just isolated in small areas, then it means that going into tomorrow's election, we won't have that seriousness attached to it in terms of what you've mentioned as to mapping these areas, potential hotspots. From your perspective, what was the true picture of what happened on February 25, and what lessons can we take into tomorrow's elections, particularly for security agencies, because we need to have a true picture of what truly happened. And then to you, Yemi, I'd like to just ask you, in terms of your statement around the governor having to say something. The governor has said that security is not under his jurisdiction. So what can he really do, aside, of course, make statements like you called for? What more can he, as chief security officer of the state, do in response to these threats and these, or violence? What more can he do beyond just a statement? Mr. Idowu, please go for him first.
Okay, so I think it also another challenge I've seen here is that how the security agencies or whoever in charge, or like you mentioned Garba Shehu now, how they use data is also another form of concern to us. Because number one, are they looking at it? Because the issue here is that people try to use data and let the data speak to their own satisfaction, and then they want to now applaud themselves and say they are doing good. Because what you are looking at is that if you have 176,000 polling units, and you say, just less than 10,000 polling units witness electoral violence, and then you now say, it's just an isolated case, it's not widespread. And I think we are giving ourselves false hope. Let's look at it holistically. The data we have, and I think which they have is in the public domain, is that every geopolitical zone in the country witnessed one form of electoral violence or the other on the election day. What happened in Borno? Of course, that talks about Borno. You have that also in Gombe. You have in Bauchi. That talks about the Northeast. You come to Kano. You come to Kaduna, that talks about the Northwest. You come to Kogi, North Central, Abuja here. You talk about Nasarawa, where we recorded cases of electoral violence. That is the North Central. What happened in Lagos, Osun, Ibadan, or your state, the Southwest. You come to Delta, you come to Edo, and then you come to Bayelsa, you come to Rivers, South, you come to Imo, you come to Ebonyi. Southeast, so tell me, which of the geopolitical zone we have in the country that we did not record one form of violence or the other? And then again, when you break the statistics down to states, you find out that out of 36 states in the country, you have 25 of them recording electoral, one form of electoral violence or the other. You know, so I want to know what we mean by isolated cases. Some people lost their life in the election. Some people were stabbed. Some people, see, again, the question we need to begin to ask ourselves, and it talks about the sanctity and the value we place on human life. Even one case of electoral violence is not something that should be encouraged. It's something that the president, everybody should rise up to condemn. Just one. And we now begin to talk, oh, they are no more than they are isolated cases. Do people need to die in our election? Don't forget, election is a civil affair. It's not a military affair. We are not in war. And then people coming out to exercise their civic duty, they are being attacked, they are being intimidated, and they are being harassed. And some people were shot. Go to see what happened in Kano. Now, some people were shot, places were burnt, property were burnt, destroyed, and then we want to call that isolated cases. It's painting a picture for Nigeria, and it is not an isolated case. And I think I disagree, but we are having magnitude of electoral violence on our hand.
Bukola.
And it's something that needs to be tamed.
All right.
Hello, Bukola. Is it that you can't hear us from the studio? We've been trying to ask you to please wrap up so that we can manage time.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so quickly, the point about what happened, a lot has happened in 3 weeks. There's been the post-election sentiment of people being angry. And as you rightly said, elections are also local. So there's a lot more focus on sort of gubernatorial and state House of Assembly elections that makes it critical to focus on security for this election. Secondly, optics matter. All of us right now are responding to flyers and statements, and we're responding to what we see, MC Oluomo on a video. So the optics of the chief security officer of the state taking responsibility for the state matters. A couple of weeks ago, I was here talking about ethnic baiting in Lagos. But I was happy when he came on March 8th to then talk about the fact that he condemns ethnic bigotry or whatever, which was critical, but I think it took him too long. And the same thing for this. We've been talking about this Oro now for a number of days. Elections are tomorrow. Lagos State has still not said anything. Optics are critical. And the fact that we are having to prod and insist and demand and push for it. Dr. Abati made the point yesterday about the position of the law. The law says that for anybody to declare any traditional festival, as he said, you need Lagos State's permission. So are we saying that all these 5 ballets did not get Lagos State's permission? Now, if they didn't, that's actually a problem in and of itself. That you don't need anybody to tell the Lagos State government that you have to say something when people are declaring festivals that are telling non-original Yoruba people or non-indigenes to stay in their homes. And lastly, the position of the security agencies. I think it's critical that it's nice to know that the army and the thugs, quote unquote, recognize that the army could keep them at bay. And so imagine if we had a statement or a press briefing where you had the governor, the head of the commandant of the army in Lagos, and the commissioner of police. I can hear you now. And there's a clear statement around security in Lagos and protection. I think those are the types of optics that we need to see and that the governor hasn't done enough of.
So is it that we are just trying to be very funny? Because you see, these same festivals, something happened. There's a story I'm following currently that happened in a Pokia local government area of Ogun State. The chief priests and the key people in that local government tried to do a festival on election day. You know what the CP of Ogun State, very amiable Frank Oba, did? He arrested all of them, brought them to his office, told them to sign an undertaking, and they signed it. And there's a video evidence, I'm following that story. Arrested them. Why can't we do the same here? Why is the case different?
That's it. So I'm sure the CP, somebody will send this clip to the CP so we can be clear. But I think, which is, honestly, it's not about being funny. It's about clarity and leadership. And that's my point to the Lagos State governor. That there hasn't been that clarity of saying, this is my state and I will not condone this rubbish. And he hasn't done that. And that's simply the case. Because if he thinks it's that critical and he calls the commissioner of police, I don't understand what these people are doing. I'm not aware that this was done. Kindly do your job, to your point, as the security agency in this state. I'm sure our outcomes will be very different.
At the hands of the CP, type, because this is a fellow CP in Ogun State that did this. So
I'm sure he can.
Are the hands of the CP of Lagos tied?
Valid question.
Anyway, just before we go, somebody sent this text message. He said, there is a gungun. We've been talking about Oro. This person says, there is a gungun going on at the moment in Ajiran, Agungi. It happened yesterday too. Thugs, about 100, are everywhere with canes, beating people who dare to come out.
During the day?
Yes, it is saddening. I'm an LP agent. Which one is called LP? Okay, LP, Labour Party. That must be. Okay, it's Labour Party, they call it LP. Okay, so this is what this person is saying. So it's not just Oro, there's also a gungun in the mix now. So,
but the point is that there's anything and everything in the mix to keep people. But to end on a positive note, and I think this was to Ayo's point, maybe off camera, is really at the end of the day, this election's about us and our lives and the people who are going to lead us. And I really would like to encourage people to do come out in numbers so that there's sort of, they say there's safety in numbers, come out in numbers. There are interesting things going on online of how people can kind of posture themselves and be prepared. And to the police, yes, you're not allowed to have arms at polling units, but there are non-election police officers who can station far away, which is my understanding of how the police has clustered its staff that can respond. And then the military, we saw what they did in Etiosa. We hope the military will also be out. There's a debate about the role of military, but in this election, we do need them and we see their purpose. So encourage people to please come out. And there'll be several platforms encouraging people to take pictures of your polling unit results, upload them as we've talked about, so that there's also a parallel for these elections to count at the end of the day. Thank you.
Bukola Idowu, just before we go, just to take something from you, some of these police commands, I cite a specific example of DIG John Amadi in charge of the Southeast. He says anybody that tries to disrupt the polls in the Southeast tomorrow should be ready to die, will just be shot. Would you recommend that summary execution to the police? And I've not seen DIG Amadi denying this.
Well, I think that is also going too far, because at the same time we are also going into extrajudicial killing, which might also be another another monster on our hand, because you are leaving that at the discretion determine who is disrupting the election, and then we shoot. But we don't even need to get to this stage. The truth here is this: all the police agencies, all the security agencies in this country, I repeat, by now, some of us have shared our reports with them. They have also done their own intelligence gathering. They know the hotspots, they know likely perpetrators. If they are really serious and they are committed, and I want to say it here on camera, that their commitment, they are really committed to or their loyalty is to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. They need to be proactive. They don't need this to happen on election day. Because let me tell you, this is another form of rigging. Because wherever in those polling units where violence will take place, such kind of polling units are likely going to be cancelled. And that is reducing the margin of opponents. They just need to mobilize and go and disrupt that stronghold. And then you reduce the margin there. It's another form of rigging. So we need a police that is neutral and that is proactive this time around.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. Well, Yemi Adamolekun, I'm told that the governor of Lagos State had a broadcast yesterday in which you made it very clear that the Lagos State government is committed to peace and lawful conduct of the elections tomorrow. But I'm sure he must have heard you saying that he must do something about all these egunguns and oros that are crawling out of the complex.
Festival around
as we speak now.
Yes, so he must have heard you, I believe. But he says peace.
And speak to the issues directly.
Yeah.
And the people involved.
Tomorrow.